when I say that my DNA was forever changed for the better during that fundraiser, I mean it, because it was the first time I got to just like lay down and I got to let my like adrenal glands kind of like, just like I could stop fighting for like a second.
Hey, it's Nick, and welcome back to the show. Sometimes life throws you a curveball, and sometimes it throws you two. And that's exactly what happened to my returning guest, Devin Bramhall. See, when she first joined us, we talked about her incredible journey to solopreneurship, but we just kind of glossed over a crucial chapter of the story. So today, she is back to share her battle with not one, but two different types of cancer, a part of her journey that deserves to be heard, needs to be shared, and will absolutely move you. Devin's story isn't just about survival, it's about finding strength in places you never knew existed. This episode is a real dialogue, and it might just change how you think about resilience. And I'm beyond thankful for Devin to come back and sharing this part of her story with us. This is 1000 Rounds. This is going to be a fun conversation because I feel like this is a conversation that we danced around a bit the first time we chatted, and now you're back.
And now I'm back.
Usually part two comes like 6 months later at minimum, but this was like 6 days later, maybe 2 weeks. But this was a much needed part two because we were chatting after the fact. You were talking about your experience, and I was like, we didn't really touch this at all. And I think because it feels like a touchy subject.
Not to me, honestly, just because I lived it. And there's something about cancer where, and this is true across several other cancer survivors that I've gotten to know since, you sort of walk away and you're like, I think everything's fine. You know what I mean? Like day to day, I was really afraid to talk about it in the beginning, like when I still had it, because I was afraid. Now I felt like there was a reason for people to not take me seriously. And like I already had to battle that my entire career just by like being a woman, not going to like a fancy school. So I was already constantly succeeding and still having to like work really hard for people to be like, oh, you're smart.
Can you back up a second? Because you said another reason for people to not take me seriously. Like, she's not dead yet. Like, that was like the whole premise of even us wanting to come back and have this conversation. It was like,
I love that. So I've not been able to stop thinking about it since. I'm like, well, I'm not dead. Well, I'm not dead yet. That's a Monty Python skit, by the way. Yeah.
I got you. That's kind of like what prompted the thinking. Anyway, but it's like, well, what is it about having cancer that makes you feel like somebody wouldn't take you seriously?
Because I was sick. The one thing I had my whole career that nobody could ever like tell me anything about, like they couldn't change about me, is that I was incredibly strong and resilient and brave. And those are things you just can't argue about. You know what I mean? Like it's too apparent. So anyone could belittle my success or just straight claim it from me. They could do all that stuff. But I was like, when it came to my strength, like that was something I always felt I had control over and ownership over. And being sick, I was like, well, now I'm going to be this like sick woman and no one's going to hire me. And I really needed people to hire me.
You need money to pay for cancer treatments.
That and like living your life, because I wasn't working full time. So I was like, oh, I need money to like have this apartment, this like studio apartment, and like feed myself and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're not in like Miss Maisel's apartment. You're in like a regular apartment. All right, so hold on. Let's back up to the beginning. When I first, because I didn't know who you were until one day, Jay Acunzo, I know, can you believe it? I must live under a rock. One day, Jay Acunzo publishes, hey, we're hosting this event for my friend Devin Bramhall. She has a really rare form of cancer and we want to do something to support her. And a bunch of people, like all our friends, were like, we're getting involved. John Bonini, Brandon Hufford, a bunch of other people were really invested in supporting that. And I was like, who's this Devin person? People seem to really care about her. And when we were talking the other day, that's what you said to me. You were like, I am just blown away that people cared.
What was cool about it is that I was in a place at that time, like going into cancer, where I'd really just lost faith in the community, in the industry. Like, I was just like, man, people just suck. And I was like, I'd kind of given up. I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I was sort of demoralized permanently. And so then I go off and have cancer, and the whole, like, the institution doesn't support me either. And so I can't get Social Security, I can't get unemployment because my former employer blocked it for no reason. Yeah. I mean, it's like the level of fucked upness that is out there is immense. I was saving, but I was like, I had to liquidate like investment assets, savings account. Like, I was on the last of it. And I still owed taxes on the money I'd made for work that year. I was actually technically in debt, just like not physically yet. And no, I couldn't get a yes. I was literally fighting for my own life, and not a single fucking thing in the universe was like, can I help you at all? And the answer was no for a while, until my mom was like, she'd asked me early on, she's like, we can do like a fundraiser for you. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? For some reason, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't show my community. I was too afraid to show that I was weak in any way. I finally said yes, but I was like, I'm not sharing it with anyone in my community. Like, I'll send an email out to friends or whatever, but like, I'm not doing it. And it was Allie Tunnel, who worked for me at Animals, who I was mentoring at the time. And we were just like friends, obviously. And she was like, it had been going for a few days, and she was like so invested. And she was like, Devin, I want to ask you to let me share this. She's like, I want you to let me do it. And I was like, at that point, I was like, I just gave in, and I was like, yes. And then I chucked my phone across the room and refused to look at it for 24 hours because I was like, I was so afraid. I was afraid. I did not look at my phone at all. And finally I looked at it, and I was like, every inbox of mine was like overflowing. And it was one of those things that changed me. It changed my DNA perspective, right? I was like healed in such a way that I was like, oh, not everyone's bad.
It's like the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes that day.
Yeah, exactly. little baby marketing Grinch was like, well, maybe. So this was like a really cool way to like show me that my life hadn't been a complete and total waste, which is how I felt before.
You had cancer twice, and I think this is also a part of the story that not many people know.
So I had cancer in my mouth when I was CEO at Animals. I think it was like the end of 2021. And also they weren't sure they'd gotten it all. And so they had to wait months for me to heal before doing another scan. The doctor was really good at telling me beforehand. He's like, if we didn't get it at all, it means it was deeper than we thought, in which case, like, we have to do a major surgery on you. So anyway, I end up finding out that spring that I'm fine. They're like, yep, we got it all. You're good to go now. And then a year later, I have an ovarian cyst and it ruptures. And I've honestly been in the hospital a lot of my life. I have never been in that much pain in my whole life. And the male surgeon who ended up treating me was like, oh yeah, you feel like you're going to die. He's like, it's the worst pain in the world. So anyway, I get the cyst and they're like, this is good news. It's really big. You're going to lose your right ovary and your fallopian tube, but because it's big, it's probably not cancerous. So like, this is going to be fine. So I'm like, fine. And so they take it out a few days later. And then I come back a month later to get the results from the biopsy they do of the thing or whatever. And I go to this, like the guy's office or whatever. And he's like, so you have cancer. And he's like, it's this really rare cancer that everyone dies. 60 people in the whole world have ever had it. Everyone dies because it's really good at hiding, so it doesn't show up on scans. It spreads like wildfire, like it's a fucking pro, right? And because it's undetectable, like by the time it's too late and you die. So he's like, so I end up being really lucky, right? They're like, you're not going to die, but you need chemo. But then I'm like, well, why the fuck do I have cancer again? Can we talk about this? So I'm at MSK and they had treated my last cancer. So I get transferred over there and they do a genetic study and they're like, cool. Your two cancers are unrelated. There's absolutely nothing that links those two cancers together. They are like, it's like oil and water. So like, we don't know. We just don't know why you got those two. But we found this gene. It's called the CHEK2 gene. And it makes you more likely to get colon cancer or breast cancer, neither of which you've had.
So like, be ready is what they just said.
Yes. Well, I'd already gotten my mammogram that year, so I was good. And they did a colonoscopy and now I have to get them like all the time. So they did a colonoscopy, then I have to go do another one in like 2 weeks. But the point is I'm lucky there too, because now I'm on such an aggressive monitoring schedule that like I might not die.
What if something's coming, they'll find it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they find this very aggressive super cancer that spreads like wildfire, and they're like, everybody dies from it.
And no one knows anything about it.
But how? What was it about your situation that they were like, you're gonna be fine? Because they found it before.
Yeah.
Like, so your this ovarian cyst that exploded alerted them to this thing before it was too late.
This surgeon, he looked at me and he was like, your cyst saved your life. I was like, wow. I was like, that's a little dramatic, but also I guess you're right. So long story short, I start chemo in like November. But guess what? During this time, Ashley and I are speaking at Inbound. So I go to Inbound in September amidst like my entire life changing and like I'm giving a talk, right?
Marketing's important. Trust me. Like, how do you stand on stage and tell everyone this is important things? Please care about it.
I think I was still in the process of like finding out exactly how bad it, like I knew I had cancer, but I didn't fully know what was going to happen yet. Totally. So I'm at this like conference and I'm like trying to be like, okay, fine, you know, and I don't know if I'm going to lose my hair or not. And then I go to Austin and I'm like, you know, again, I'm just trying to like be normal. And like, that was really when the anxiety like super hit. Like I started to lose my mind because I'm like, I got my eyebrows tattooed on just in case. I was like, I have to learn I have to learn about wigs. I have to like, you know what I mean? I was like, what about my clients? Like I need work. How am I going to work? They're like, oh, you should be able to work. They wrote me a letter immediately and they were like, this bitch can't work. She's fucking like in the emergency room constantly.
Yeah. I mean, I get the whole you start spiraling thing because you're like, this is uncharted territory.
And you don't want to tell anyone. Like I didn't want to tell anyone. So I was trying to figure out how to hide it. And then the first round was like kind of fine. So here's the crazy thing. They tell you what to expect. So they're like, I was on 2 different type of chemo medications. One of them, it gives you a cold sensitivity so that when you touch like metal and stuff, it like stings and you have to wear gloves when you go outside, because otherwise your fingers are going to like burn and like tingle burn. It's not physically manifesting, but the feeling is very, very real. And the other thing that happens is your throat feels like it completely closes up and you can't breathe. So you have to cover your entire face. And when I tell you that I was walking like fully covered still and it was a little bit cold, like I was like, you breathe like this. You're like that's, and the worst thing is I learned the wrong way one morning walking my dog that my face was fully covered. My eyes swelled shut because of the cold. So I'm standing outside in New York. My dog is right here. And I kid you not, I could not fucking see.
So like having this chemo in the wintertime is a big no.
It's the worst. So the whole time I am fighting for my life and I'm also fighting for my life because I'm starting to liquidate all of my assets, right? And because I can't get any social services, because social services and the world hate single women, especially if you don't have kids. And so there's nothing for you. Social Security takes 6 months to even kick in if you can get it. And I was already turned away by unemployment. So I start scouring the internet, and I find this place called Cancer Care, grants and stuff, because you're like, there's got to be something out there. Eating was difficult and keeping anything down was difficult. I had to go like whatever. So I also have this entire huge project of financing myself while this is going on. So I'm applying for all of these grants. I mean, I have this spreadsheet tracker because you have to do things at just the right time. You have to like put all this information. I mean, I had to put so many financial documents together, and it's not like you can just use the same pile every time. It's like very specific with each one, and they're all a little bit different. But it's like you can't rest. Like there was no resting because you're like $500 here, $1,000 here. I'm like, I still have to pay rent in January, right? And so it's like this whole thing of like, you have to just, I couldn't stop. And towards the end, it was so bad that they had to like loosen up the dose of the pills because I just like I wasn't keeping anything in my body. So when I say that my DNA was forever changed for the better during that fundraiser, I mean it, because it was the first time I got to just like lay down and I got to let my like adrenal glands kind of like, just like I could stop fighting for like a second. I was so tired. I couldn't even like talk to anyone. So yeah, it was really nice that everybody came out for me and didn't treat me like a sick person after. They were just like, you're not dead.
This is what you said to me though, just to make it like, I'm not that heartless of a person. Like you were like, hey, I came back, I posted this thing to LinkedIn. And you're like, I'm back and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something and I'm back. And I was like, you could have posted not dead yet. Hit publish. And you would have got a fantastic response. Like you didn't need to do much on that front. So you're not dead yet. And it's the most lighthearted way of saying you're not dead yet.
Well, you know what though, Nick? Like this is the thing is cancer survivors really like to laugh and they take a lot less seriously because of what they've gone through. And so we're just dying for people to be funny. Like we're not like, it's a funny thing how like I went to this, I think I said this at the beginning, with the cancer retreat with all these other cancer survivors, and they've now become my like cancer mommies. I love them so much. And we laughed that whole weekend. Like we were just like, we were making cancer jokes. We're like, you know what I mean? Like talking about like how bad the diarrhea is and how you're like throw up all the time. Like we are cackling. Because when I tell you afterwards, you're like, nothing matters. Like nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean like 95% of the things that we all walk around thinking mattering. And it's like, no. Like your family matters. You matter. like don't be a
marketing
dick.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Marketing does
so
not matter at all.
Stupid. It's so stupid. This is the dumbest, because you want to know why? Quite literally, nothing has changed. I was like, I'm doing some work with a client right now. And I was like, I actually like went into their email thing to like help tweak something or whatever. And I was like, oh, so these are the same. Everything about email is the fucking same. Like nothing, all this like hype and all this talk, nothing is any different. Everything is fundamentally works the exact same way as it did before. Plus there's AI now.
You know, I've been saying this, the phrase from whose line is it anyway, keeps coming back to me more and more. everything's made up and the points don't matter.
Yep.
I have found myself saying this to more and more people, especially on LinkedIn.
Oh.
People are like, I don't know what to write on. Like, everything's made up and the points don't matter. Like, this is bullshit. Like, none of it matters. It really doesn't.
No.
I think this was the whole point of why I wanted to have this conversation with you, which was, it feels like it's this really touchy subject. And I think to a lot of people it probably is. And in the moment, it probably is really hard to wrap your head around what is going on. And it's hard to look and say, this time next year, I'm going to be on a podcast talking about this and laughing about it. And like, I'm not dead, but like, it's just weird. And that's why I felt like this conversation had to happen, because I'm sure that there's, like, you had mentioned to me, you're like, I tell a lot of people privately, and I feel like there's a lot of people that dance around it. And like, cause they're not trying to be rude. Like, they're trying to be nice and respectful.
Yeah.
But you're like, I don't mind telling it, but it's like, it's just, there's just like a weirdness about the entire thing that people don't necessarily know how to act or how to, like, do I not touch it all? And then we became friends and I was like, all right, yeah, like we can definitely go there.
And 3 weeks after my last, I think it was 3 weeks after I finished chemo, maybe it was a month, I landed a consulting gig and I like went out and plucked it out of the universe. I was like,
hell yeah.
I walked away and I was like, damn right, I'm not dead.
Still fucking got it.
Yeah. And I had a lot of energy, weirdly, after I was finished for about, I think until about June or July of this year. And then I got the worst chronic fatigue I didn't even know what chronic fatigue was until this happened. And I was like, I thought all these things were wrong with me. And it turns out my body was perfectly healthy and fine. It's just like chemo takes 5 years to get out of your system. So then I went through this like huge emotional roller coaster of like, I'm a doer. That's how I that's how I survive mentally, physically, is like, I can get myself out of anything because I'm more capable than 95% of the world. Right. And I was like, I can't get myself out of this. I am weak in a way that I cannot overcome. And that was fucking terrifying. Because I was like, how am I going to survive? And then that's really honestly how I live now, is like, you get this few months right after where you're just like so happy and no one can touch it.
You're so high on life because you're not dead and on chemo anymore. Did you lose your hair or no?
No. Oh, sorry. I forgot to close that loop. So they ended up giving me the chemo that didn't mean I lost my hair. So I was like, and that's why they had to take it to that forum of all the cancer doctors, is like, they had to decide which course was going to be the best course to kill my cancer. One of them would have meant losing my hair. One of them wouldn't. And so I got really lucky.
That's like a nice little in the pro column. Got to keep your hair.
I think afterwards, I think the thing, if I'm being totally honest, and I quite literally like had this call with my mom last week, I was like bawling my eyes out to her. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to die, actually. Like anytime there's something like that feels weird, I'm like, I have another cyst, the other ovary, like I'm going to, like, I think the circumstances are so random around the cancers I got and how like little cancer runs even in my family. Like I'm an anomaly. And that makes me feel completely out of control and like everything is possible. And every day that I have that feeling, I look at my life and I'm like, I don't care about this life at all. I don't really care about anything I've done. It's not like I made a bunch of other people rich. I didn't get rich. I live in a studio apartment. I don't want to live in a studio apartment. Like I started making the list and I was like, fuck, I got to get to work. Only I'm really fucking tired now. And so it's this weird, like you just go through. So it's like, I think the cool thing about that is like, I can't give any fucks about like my world right now. I'm
Never
like,
again.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, this is stupid. And the cool thing about that is I've never been better at like knowing what my boundaries are and therefore being able to communicate them. Right. And so it's like, instead of it being like it coming out when I was younger, when I was like, you know what I mean? It's like, I can now say in clear, plain human language, like what I want and don't want in a way that doesn't like, make everybody mad. Although I still make people mad, but,
it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm like, I just don't care. Like there's so much, like a friend of mine recently was like saying something and I was like, these aren't problems. These are not problems. I have friends in my life with legitimate problems right now that I'm like, holy fuck, that's a problem. But I was like, if someone comes to me and they try to like lay their fucking bullshit on me, I was like, that's not a problem. Stop. And I'm just like, go talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm like, you better have a fucking problem if you're coming to me. And even still, I might tell you to go talk to somebody else because it's like, you can't. Life is like, I just didn't realize how much of my life I'd wasted trying to prove to people that I was valuable and that I was like worthy of all the, like, why did I feel that way? And so now I have my head screwed on just right.
Yeah, I think because we don't know better, like we're so like, especially our generation, we've been pre-wired to just be like, work really hard, work a lot, do all this stuff, like just hammer away and blah, 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 and like buy a house, have some kids, live the American dream, do all this shit. And then one day something happens and then your whole life is put into perspective.
Yep.
Like, so I'll share a story with you. So this actually, the exact same time last year, October 26th, my mom was diagnosed. Actually, she wasn't even diagnosed that day. She was diagnosed earlier, but that was the day she had her surgery. She has a sacral chordoma, which is like I thought this cancer was rare. Yours is 60 people in the world, like 300 people a year get this thing. So it's like
That's
super rare.
Very fucking rare.
It's pretty rare. It's an insanely rare thing. And it's like this crazy bone cancer that grows in your sacrum, right? So it's like October 26th, she goes in for a 2-stage surgery. The first surgery was like an 8-hour surgery. The second surgery was a 16-hour surgery to fix all of this stuff. And I share all that with you because that shit puts your life into perspective. I was like, fuck marketing. Who cares about that? Like, who cares about like posting to LinkedIn or doing whatever this stuff is? Like, all of a sudden, one day to the next, you go from my tailbone hurts a little bit to you have one of the rarest cancers there is.
I need to hear the end of this story.
My mom is like an anomaly. They are literally like studying her because they're like, how is it possible that you're doing so well? There are people who have had this surgery years ago who are not doing as well as she's doing. This shit puts your life into perspective. It didn't even happen to me. Like, it happens to your mom and you're like, oh, like I gotta I'm so zoomed in on the thing that I'm trying to do, like this business I'm trying to build and all this other shit that I'm trying to do. And it takes one of these things to really rip you out of that. And I'm just like a bystander, right? Like, it happens to someone I'm close to. There's like, your situation happened to you.
When you have cancer and they're like, oh, this thing's going on. They're like, but it's not cancer. And I'm like, listen, you are allowed, everyone's allowed to have their own space for the thing that they're going through, because everybody has their cancer. If it's something you've never gone through before, it feels like the biggest thing in your life. So like, this is one thing that's been really important to me the whole time is I'm like, I'm not the worst off person in the world. Like, yeah, this sucks, but like other people go through shit too.
It puts your life into perspective in a crazy way. It's like, we have like our kid is like a year and a few months old. She I think she was either a few weeks pregnant before or after. It's hard to remember, time blurs together. So it's like, there's like a lot of stuff going on. I'm trying to build this business, and then this rips you out of that hole, and you're like, perspective, right? Like, don't lose sight of shit that matters. Like, call your fucking mom.
Especially
like, now I FaceTime my mom every day with my boys. I'm like just like, even if it's a quick 5 minutes, FaceTime her 5 minutes, say what's up. He says hi to my dad, and it's like, cool. Like, that little shit goes such a long way.
Yeah.
Because before you don't realize like how long you go without talking to people and doing stuff. It's like, oh, you look at us like, oh shit, I haven't talked to my mom in a couple of weeks.
I mean, you're totally right. Like, I think every single time I had to go to the clinic, like my, because you have to get blood drawn all the time. Like, you get the chemo goes in through your veins. So like my arms were like a mess. Like I looked like a meth addict. I was just like, because they start to like get really traumatized. But every time you go in, the many times per month that you have to go in, not just for chemo, but for the follow-up exams, all that stuff, you have to answer the question at least 3 times every time. Are you pregnant? Could you be pregnant? Every fucking time. You're 40, turning, I guess I turned 41 this year. So I was 40 going into 41. And they're like, are you pregnant? Is there any way you could be pregnant? You have to fill it out on forms. Then you have to take pregnancy tests just to be sure. And I'm like, well, let me tell you something. My boyfriend, it turns out, isn't even in love with me. And I'm 40, turning 41, minus an ovary. And I have cancer.
Lots of chemo.
Being reminded of that every fucking day is not fun. That was something that I wanted at one time. And so it's like a tough surprise thing where like, not only was your time limited already, but now all of a sudden it's like being thrown in your face constantly. It's too late. It's too late. It's too late. And it's just like, fucking hell. And it's like these little things that you're just like, you just get used to it, right? Hospitals have to cover their ass constantly. And so all the tiny things that you're like, why do I have to do this? It's so they don't get sued because people are monsters. And like, if they get caught doing anything remotely imperfectly, they will get skewered financially for it.
So you are cancer free. You're in remission. Is that how
I didn't have cancer the last time. They didn't find no cancer came up in scans the last time I got checked, which was like a couple months ago. And my cancer markers were really good. So like probably not. I just don't know what you're allowed to, like, I don't know what it's called. So I'm like, I don't know. I think probably not. Probably I don't have cancer.
Probably I don't have cancer. Okay. When did you not have cancer for the first time? Like when you were like, the chemo was done and they're like, they did the scan and they were like, you're good. When was that? Or was it the first like exhale you were able to take?
Oh, I never really took one. Because that's the thing about cancer is like, it's not like the movies. It doesn't just like end one day. It takes like, they're like, the first scan, they're like, you don't have it right. Like things are starting to go down. Like your markers are still a little bit high, but like they're on a downward trend. And then you go the next time, they're like, great, they're down a little bit more. And it's just exactly what you said earlier. My last scan, they were kind of like edging me out the door. And that's when I was like, I think I'm fine now. Because like when they start telling you to fuck off, exactly what you said, you're like, oh. Because like when you go in, they're like, they get on you. Like they're like, we need to do this immediately. Like shit goes really fast once they find it. But once they're like, actually, we can see you in 6 months. I'm like, yeah.
We don't have time for you anymore. And you're like, that's what I wanted to hear.
Oh, it is the best. It is the best. Because I spent a lot of time going back and forth. So like, that's not really how it happens, but that's also fine. It's going to take me a while before, like it's going to be years. Cause like to me, I could still get cancer in a year just based on like recent history. So like it's not really about exhaling. It's just about in that moment being like, this is great news right now. and then just kind of like living your life and not thinking about it, right? And I think that's the best thing you can do is like, you're like, if I don't, I try not to think about it that much. And then that's the way you do it. And you just keep doing that and hoping that eventually something wildly amazing happens to you. Which,
like, I feel like you should play the scratchy lotteries because,
yeah,
I mean, it seems like your odds are pretty good.
Well, I didn't die. I literally am going to write it. My next book is going to be, it's going to have to say that. Like, I didn't die. Like, this is
you should just post it to LinkedIn right now. Not dead yet.
Yeah, that was it. Not dead yet.
Not dead yet. Just post that to LinkedIn right now and see how you're going to go mega viral. 20 million views, 6,000 shares, 500,000 likes. Like,
yeah,
perfect place to end.
Go hug your kids. Go hug your wife and your kids. It's a lot. I know it is. It's a lot to listen to. So.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's a lot, but I think it's like it is also like it's a story of triumph. Like, not dead yet.
Not dead yet.
And you're just doing whatever the hell you want. You're writing a book. You can go make yourself a bunch of money.
Oh, God, I hope so. I need to fucking get good at that.
Hey, Nick again, and thanks for listening. I'm excited to share a new program that I've been working on called Full Stack Solopreneur, in partnership with my friend and legendary entrepreneur, Erica Schneider. Now, unlike other programs, Full Stack Solopreneur is a hybrid digital program for independent professionals who are too far along for another course to be really all that helpful, but not far enough to invest in a private coaching or consulting service. In here, you'll gain access to both the full curriculum and monthly group coaching clinics to teach you how to create a legendary niche offer, how to build a content engine, and how to sell like a human. You can learn more at fullstacksolo.com. That's fullstacksolo.com.